Welcome to MeatsPad, a platform dedicated to sharing breakthrough knowledge that is accessible to the meats industry. On each episode, we will hear from meat specialists and professionals to talk about numerous topics in meat science, including animal welfare, meat production, meat quality, food safety, and so much more.
Hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. How are you, Dr. Bass?
I'm doing great, Francisco. Excited to be here as usual. We have a little bit of a different format today. We have some of our leadership from the American Meat Science Association, Collette Kaster and Deidrea Mabry, joining us. They have decided that they're going to flip the tables on us today. What do you think about that, Francisco?
Well, I'm a little bit scared. Just to put things into perspective, we had to redo the intro like 4 times because this is scary. They got a bunch of questions for us, and just very excited for this. Welcome, Collette. Welcome, Deidrea.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will do our best not to intimidate and torture you too much during this, but as you know, we were working on our monthly decision making for who should be featured on the upcoming episode of MeatsPad. And we decided, as you said, to turn the tables and to do an interview diving into how MeatsPad came to exist, how the two of you work together, and how this is fulfilling some both personal and professional goals for both of you. So we're super excited to interact with you today doing that.
Happy to be here.
Take it away.
Good. All right. Well, we'll start off by having you give us a little bit of background on how the heck this happened. So Francisco, you were a hardworking graduate student. Dr. Bass, you have a day job, a family. So how did you come together and decide to create a podcast?
So this started right in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. I'm a little bit extroverted, and I think I have a lot of energy sometimes. And I always had this dream of communication, this wanting to communicate what we do as far as research in academia and just communication in general. And I just saw this opportunity for just strengthening this relationship between, in the meat industry in general. And this was just an idea, and then I visited with my advisor, Dr. Boyle. At that time, I was finishing up my PhD. I had like a year to go, and those folks listening, it can be overwhelming to have your daily tasks, like all your stuff you had to do in the lab and help with class and stuff, and then putting this stuff on top. But when I asked her about, can I do this? Of course, with the extra time I can have for this, and she goes, as long as you keep doing what you're doing, and you can do it. So very objective oriented, and there was at that time a little bit of miscommunication for all the COVID-19 stuff happening at that time, and that's how it started. I really took one of my closest colleagues, 5 to 8 colleagues, and say, you know what, we just record them, and it really turned out that way. That's how it started, and then Dr. Brandon Gehring, and he's now in Visco TPAC, mentioned you have to interview Dr. Phil Bass from University of Idaho. Like, who's I think I saw Dr. Bass a while ago, but I didn't have that background. So I reached out to him, and I don't know, that podcast that we recorded on the very early on dry aging. I don't know, you can I don't know, say something about it, Dr. Bass, but I think we hit it off. It was like a natural, I don't know, follow-up questions, and we got excited, and I think it was very clear at the end, like let's do this. All that energy that came out, we can just put it on other interviews, And actually, during RMC last year, well, 2021 in Reno, it was the first time that I met him, like, officially, right? All those recordings, we did it through Zoom, and I think
That's true. That is the first time you saw one another in person.
It truly was. Yeah, and I'll confess to everyone, what happened was the first thing that I said to Francisco was not hi or great to finally meet you, but wow, you're tall. And so the Zoom does not show height very well, obviously. But what that meant was that we had already built a pretty solid friendship virtually, and man, things just really clicked that much more when we were in person. And so I was grateful to have a chance to finally meet Francisco in person. But I'll chime in too now a little bit to since he mentioned when I entered into the story, I was one of the earlier interviews, and after that interview, we just kept talking and talking and talking. And Francisco posed, ultimately, what if I kind of do a little guest hosting? Serendipitously, I was actually considering this exact same idea, and I've told Francisco many times, I was too chicken to do it. And Francisco was bold and adventurous and willing to do it. And so I'm merely riding along on the coattails of the success that Francisco started out. But every day I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be a part of this. Many people who have interacted with me know that one of my missions in life is to tell the story of animal agriculture, and especially from the meat products perspective. And this is that platform to do that. And if we can continue to connect that story with making beneficial impacts to our industry listeners, everybody wins. So
and that's objective.
Cool. Yeah, it's a pretty cool objective and a pretty cool story.
It's not about us. It's about just featuring other people's way of thinking and other people's, like, even in different culture. We planning to like this year doing more international interviews with folks in Europe, Japan, either Mexico, South America, like just to featuring other meat scientists. That's what this is about. Just featuring other people's minds and work.
But the common theme is almost always that you're speaking to people who have a meat science background, who have formal training in meat science. Is that like a rule of MeatsPad?
I'll speak up because honestly, it's my mission is actually to hit a broader audience. And if you listen to some of the interviews, we may be talking to somebody who's very technical and very specific about their research. Oftentimes very basic research, which means, and here's an example. For those who are unfamiliar with what basic research is, this is benchtop, more chemical or molecular stuff. But how does that apply back to the industry? And we have to keep in mind American Meat Science Association serves way more than just us academics. We're here for the greater whole. We're here for the greater industry, and we have to make sure that even if we are on a very technical subject, we need to be talking to those who maybe don't have the extensive, maybe scientific background that we have, but still, how can we apply it to their business?
Well, to me, before he answers also, when I think about, what makes you guys such a great pair to do this is you are naturally bringing those perspectives with the respective day jobs you each have now. And then you further integrate all of Francisco's international experience, the fact that he speaks about 120 languages, which I found out when we were having lunch together, and it just makes for a perfect pairing from what I can tell.
Well, and I think I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work at Ultrasource. I think when even before I started the podcast, I've had a relationship with them since it's very close to my hand, about a couple hours. And I used to come here and help for all the academies, for all people that may not know the company, Ultrasource, it's an equipment company that we fabricate vacuum chambers, roll stock machines, and we also help with other equipment. And so we help small, medium meat processors. And I think it's for, we've talked a lot about how this podcast started, to just getting those resources for those small and medium meat processor. So for those folks that are out there that may not have the ability to have a master's, or someone with a master's in meat science, or someone with a PhD in meat science, or even a degree, just to have that platform where they can just learn about salt, learn about nitrite, learn about, I don't know, further processing in general, but also a little bit about animal welfare. We try to have those interviews that are very practical for them to utilize. I mean, we had a very good one that one of my favorites with Dr. Vogel, talking about stunning. Well, when you talk about those things, and I think that's the purpose. And I'm more than fortunate with Ultrasource for allowing me to continue with this, and I think that further education and continued education for those for our people, for our clients, and I think this is a good pair as well.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And, kind of going back to what Phil said. So at one point, Collette and I had talked too, AMSA, we wanted to start a podcast. What does that look like? How can we share the information we have? How can we connect people? So, MeatsPad's been that great opportunity for AMSA. And, definitely like you said, as we think of the future, kind of as we approached you about kind of being part of MeatsPad, think back and, how does AMSA align with MeatsPad? How, what are some things we can do more together? How do we look and see what that future looks like? Just kind of give us your perspective on why, we feel like it's a great pair, feel like it's a great opportunity. I love doing the interviews on site at RMC. So of course we're looking forward to going to Des Moines in June of 2022, which Phil reminds me you need to update the calendar behind you. We're not in 21 anymore, Phil. But kind of how do we align? What are kind of your thoughts as we move forward, and what does that future look like for our partnership?
Well, clearly, as Deidrea has mentioned, I can't let go of the past. No, I do have a new calendar coming. I promised everyone. And for those who maybe don't see the video versions of these, I have my 2021 Northwest Farm Credit Services calendar, which is coveted up here in the Pacific Northwest. But anyway. What does the future look like? And I'll let Francisco really chime in about this, but I foresee us continuing to hit some of those really important areas that can really make beneficial improvements to our industry partners. Bringing other new ideas that researchers are working on right now, and I think that's there's a lot of great connections within the American Meat Science Association. I am a diehard fan of the American Meat Science Association. I'm dyed in the wool. I love it, and I'm grateful that we are a part of the American Meat Science Association.
Well, yeah, I think as Dr. Bass alluded to, this partnership, I think now it's becoming like one. At the beginning, it was like, okay, we're doing this with MSA, but with all this scheduling and just planning, I think we're walking together for all these new initiatives and new ideas. And I think we're, and Dr. Bass can allude to this, so we're not close-minded. I mean, we try to get, so the meat industry is a niche within the food industry in general, and I think there are a lot of other industries trying to, we can talk a little bit about those, maybe not those videos that you share with us, Dr. Bass, but that's a good example of other folks trying to, I can say, hurt the meat industry or something. Maybe that's the word, maybe not, but I think as a whole we have to be together, strong, to be that advocate for the meat industry. I think we all align because I think that's a value. That's what consumers also need, having that knowledge that it's out there. But maybe at some point it's very technical. Maybe it's not easy to digest, and I think that's also the purpose. Talking also to the consumer. Ultimately, that's the goal as well, right? But it's not easy to get a little bit of content for everyone in the supply chain. We try very hard to do that, but even though it's a niche, it's got a lot of things that we can cover.
Well, and we try to take a very positive perspective on things. There are definitely a lot of folks out there that would like to see the meat industry go away. I like to think that they're a very small group, but their voice is very loud. And so I think it's important to continue to take the high road, talk about the benefits, the benefits of meat in the diet, and helping those who are producing meat to do it efficiently, effectively, affordably. And yeah, like Francisco said, it would be an absolute dream for this podcast to be listened to by millions of consumers out there. And that's why it's important to still take those very technical bits of information that we talk to within our Meat Science Association group and kind of digest them a little bit and make it easier to understand for everyone.
Well, and there's so many topics now that people are talking about and doing that they don't even realize is meat science. So dry aging, sous vide, grilling, all are, things where people have a ton of information. And if we can be the group that supplies a little bit of the science behind those, as well as food safety, goodness knows my poor mom is sick of me lecturing her about food safety practices. So if we can bring the group that brings objective science, but in an interesting way, I think that's terrific.
Yeah, agree. And I know just with AMSA, we appreciate the partnership. We're excited about the future. We continue to grow AMSA. We're excited to grow MeatsPad. So yeah, we have a great thing going. So looking forward. So now we're going to kind of pull out a hard question for you. And this one, you guys have conducted a lot of podcasts. So other than the one that you did with Collette and I early on, because that's probably your most favorite one, but no really intended there.
Absolutely.
What is your kind of most favorite interview that you've done, and maybe kind of why it was your most favorite? So kind of be interested to hear that.
Before you say something, and this is the exact kind of the same question I asked Cheyenne. Was it like on the previous podcast? I asked her, who do you look up to? What's some of your mentors? And she was like, I cannot tell you one. I mean, if I tell you about one, I have to talk about everyone. Each podcast has had its own helpful, insightful dialogue that helped us in some way to learn more about what they do.
Yeah, it's kind of like, picking your favorite child, I suppose. I mean, so many of these folks that we have interviewed are either former colleagues of ours or just literally just straight up good friends that we have had dinner with and drank beer with and just have hung out with, and so which makes the conversation flow really easy too. And that is one of the great things about the American Meat Science Association family. This isn't just an advertisement for AMSA, but I as I've already alluded to, I'm kind of a big fan. But we are a family, and it makes it so the conversations really flow really easy. And so to pick one, I don't know. That would be hard. There is one in particular, but I don't want to just call it out.
I think it's easier for me to say, or I guess when you start something out, when you tell people, hey, would you want to be in my podcast? Like, what podcast? I'm talking about when I first started. I think the real 3-4 first episodes that I had with no experience at all, and using, no technology at all. I think I value that a lot because going back to the first phase of MeatsPad, where it was scary, super scary to start. Like, what are people going to say? Is this are gonna people like what we're doing? But the trust of those first podcasts, really, those guys that I interview, I think I value they're very close to my heart because they trusted the project. It's easier now to say, okay, after I don't know how many we have, 40, or I don't know how many podcasts with, I think almost 100 with the Spanish ones and the English ones. But I guess it's easier for like now that it's becoming this to say, okay, I want to be on the podcast. But well, the hard part is who wants to be on without having anything, anything to show. Okay, this is you had this guy on, you had that guy on. But when you have no one, nothing to compare to, nothing. That's what I'm saying. Maybe the first 3-5 episodes with no background at all, just trying it out. And I think those were I want to say that they say trampoline. Let's say just to start all this project. And that's in my mind. That's what if I would choose, I would choose the worst audio ever. The worst. But that's how it started, and it's a good way to go back, and not only for this, for a lot of projects. And when you start something, even when you're doing research, when the first project, the first article that you publish, you go back and like, wow, did I write that? You're becoming better and better. So I think that's what it's all about, just progressing.
I feel like your answers are kind of like what I give when people are like, what's your most favorite RMC, right? Like they're all special, they're all unique, they all have really cool components. So now that's kind of leading into my next question. So this year, Collette and I for RMC, as you know, we're going to celebrate the 75th. So we've had some great interviews with some of the individuals that have really built the meat industry up to what it is. And when you sit down and talk with those individuals, you hear some really great, cool stories of how they started, the changes that had happened. And some of that stuff, I didn't learn in the textbooks when I was in school. And I feel like the next generation's coming won't either. And so we're looking at a way to really kind of capture that, to where that history and kind of where we came from and how we've advanced over the years can be captured and shared with next generations that want to stay in this industry. So when you think about kind of your interview lineup that you've done and in the future, is there anyone that, would be awesome to interview, living or, maybe someone that has passed on that, we weren't able to capture, that we kind of maybe missed the mark, or we just need to get them and hear that story from them?
Well, I can go. I think speaking with, I think one of the podcasts that just going back to your question, when I had Dr. Michael Dagman talking about just a little bit of history in meat science and how he started his research, I think we have to go back and get some of the folks that are not used to podcasts at all, and just bring them, say, okay, would you be willing to because a lot of they're not used to this technology, and when they can maybe scary, but in a way to have them on the podcast. And because you think about it, and I guess the other day I was thinking about this, like my family and my daughters, in 10 years from now, they're going to be just going to Spotify, YouTube, and all the videos are going to be there. So it's like what we're doing, it's going to be there for a long time. And I would love to have more of the guys that have retired or are in the way to retire, having them on, because in 5-10 years, like, oh, we have the opportunity to have a sit down with this legend in meat science. And I think we have to do that. And you think about, maybe we haven't done a lot as far as interviewing all those guys that might, and maybe that's something to do more this year. And at some point, connecting the old ones and the new ones, all the new researchers, I think that's something that we will love to do more. These new generations versus the old generation, and all the same topic, but how's that work? Some of the differences of this current, more modern research than what they used to do 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Just to kind of chime in, so a lot of those legends are going to be at RMC this summer. So I think to your point about the technology, we'll be able to put them in the room with the both of you directly and really hear that. So it'll be pretty cool. You might actually spend like 4 or 5 days in there, right? You may never come out. So but there's a lot of them coming. So that's really cool. So
that is really cool. And I think we absolutely need to record these folks and interview them and have them give a little bit of that developmental perspective of where we have come in the meat industry and the meat sciences and et cetera. For my PhD defense, Dr. Keith Belk, my major professor, he was very big about knowing names, and you got to know your network. You got to know the ones who have made the big differences and changes in the industry. And so I continue on that with my students because and for those who are active or those who are retired or even those from the past, we need to know who discovered what, and how do we get that scientific information specifically. If we were to interview some folks who are no longer with us, this may be for some of the folks, more seasoned veterans listening out there, but Vern Cahill, would have loved to have him. I mean, I believe he was at one of the very first RMCs, meat scientist at Ohio State, and continuing along with the Ohio State tradition. Dr. Bob Van Stavern, who we just lost just 2 years ago. But folks that have really made enormous impacts in the industry. Dr. Matsushima at Colorado State, pretty much the father of feeding concentrate feed in the Central Plains to beef cattle and just bringing that flavor that we just so desire to the meat sciences. But we do have some pretty amazing legends still with us. And Dr. Gary Smith, if you're listening out there, you're at the top of my list. And so we need to make sure we get him on the line. And I still sing the praises, and I'm very grateful to have had the chance to work with him in the past. So
we currently have, I believe, well over 100 Emeriti members, and the last time that we had the Emeriti breakfast at Colorado State, I walked in the room and it was just mind-blowing to see, just as you said, of all the names that you grew up with, that you were recognized. And for one thing, I said to all of them, like, what the heck are you doing in the Emeriti room? Like, how can it be time for you to be Emeriti rather than active members of AMSA and in your roles? And of course, we're happy for them that they eventually get to retire, but the contributions that group have provided, whether it's on tenderness, aging, PSE, or the organization, the industry, it's just, it's amazing. And so I'm glad that we'll have the opportunity to capture some of those.
I hope I don't get too nervous. Like, those are our movie stars, right? Those, some of them literally are, Temple, if she happens to be around, but I get starstruck around some of those folks, honestly. And so yeah, it will be amazing and to be able to interact with them that much more.
Yeah,
so.
No, I think it'll be good. How do you guys, the podcast world is pretty crowded. How do you guys think that you provide, one, something unique, and two, that we all work together to make sure that MeatsPad takes its rightful place in the world of meats-based podcasts?
I think we talk about that at one time, and using our expertise and what we know and the contacts that we have. And I think that's going to set us apart. And we have to do what we love to do and what we enjoy to do. And I think by just doing that more naturally, and you see a lot of it, we try not to practice a lot prior to recording anything. And we got the questions, and I think, that's the best thing to do, because as you mentioned, Collette, that's more spontaneous. Being able to understand the science and understanding that the impact of that research, or that impact of that guy that we interview, and like very well, kind of set us apart because we can ask those right questions that I know other people will benefit. There's a lot of marketing guys that are wanting to pose those questions, and I think having a degree in meat science and then going back to understand a little bit about marketing, understand a little bit about communication, I think it's harder to do. I mean, to say, okay, you spend this time of years in research and then understanding how digital marketing works and how, because we have to, I mean, this is a new era. We want it or not, like it or not, we have to be, and we have to adapt to this new technology that all the new generation, they're on podcast and are on YouTube. And so we have to be there. We have to be the advocate. And I think that's, I don't know if I say too much or I ramble a little bit. I don't know, Dr. Bass, what do you think?
You definitely hit some of the meat of what we're targeting, as far as what makes MeatsPad different, or unique. I believe what we bring to the table is quality over quantity. Both of us have day jobs, as you've mentioned. It's not like something that we can hop on and record daily, even weekly. This is something that we have to set time aside. And so we're once every 2 weeks, but we're hoping that the listeners out there are really getting filled up, getting some hearty information whenever that does happen. Now we do have occasional bonus episodes that we'll smatter in there because we're just excited and have a little extra to give to the listeners. But I think we're a quality over quantity kind of group. And the other thing that Francisco and I are able to bring is we have history, background, and context. But there are newer meat-centric, meat-focused type podcasts that are popping up here, there, and everywhere, that are doing a great job getting the information out there and connecting with the listeners. But maybe they don't necessarily have the history, or they don't have the background with the interviewee, and sometimes they may miss out on the context of what is being talked about. Whereas like Francisco has mentioned, we kind of bring a little bit of everything. Both of us have industry experience. Both of us academic experience. Both of us have gone through the scientific process, and both of us have done a lot of consumer type interactions. And so I think we can still deliver quite a bit, even with our limited time and resources.
Yeah, that's perfect. I agree with that. It is, well, on any topic, you could just, you can go on the podcast app, put in a topic, and it just comes up with such a wide variety. And so I think that we're definitely carving out a niche with the science and technical application. So now I have a little bit more of a fun question for you. So let's find out just a little more about the two of you. And I'd like each of you to tell me and Deidrea your favorite meat meal to prepare and why it's your favorite.
One of the things that I probably don't talk a lot is my background with my grandfather, the dad of my mom. He used to hunt a lot. He used to cook a lot out in the country. So I'm from Monterrey, Mexico, but his ranch was out in the country, and he used to do everything by hand. I mean, that's one of the things, like I've mentioned, like with this, I mean, all the modern stuff that we kind of have moving out from the country and being more urbanized, and we kind of losing that rural type of like connection that we have with animals. I think we can see that across the board. But I used to, he used to cook a lot, and when I have time, I do it. But it takes about 12, 15 hours, maybe like a moist cook type of thing, where you dig a hole into the ground and put some meat from either beef or pork. You can do that, and that's so tasty, like kind of a barbacoa that you can make. And next morning, first thing to do is just uncover the hole and get the meat and just make a good meal in the morning. That's takes a long time, and I think that's one of the things. Maybe the Dr. Bass is more convenient and it grills a lot more.
Interesting you say that, Francisco, and I wasn't even thinking about that, but I mean, so the question was our favorite to prepare, but yeah, if somebody else is willing to give us a hand, a legit deep pit, as in hole in the ground, type barbecue would be top of my list as far as just flavor, and that's what we had at our wedding. I mean that is it's very very traditional up in my little corner of the north coast of California, and so interesting you brought that up. Now, as far as
maybe we can have a deep pit contest at RMC this year. I mean, I was going to offer my place to Francisco because we live on the opposite corners of Kansas City, but we do have probably, more land than is available in Overland Park. Technically speaking, we have calves as well. I'll have to work on Dennis to see if he's willing to go quite that far. But
well,
I mean, and this deep pit barbacoa, Francisco.
This is something that in the recipe requires a backhoe and a cord of wood. So too, I mean, it's quite the undertaking. How about I tell you what more on my side of what I would normally regularly prepare, though, because that's quite the undertaking. But definitely a chuck end prime ribeye steak. I mean, no question there. But then very very just neck and neck, a tie would be something that's close to my family as well. My family, Bass is not Italian, but I am 3/4 Italian, and those Italians were predominantly from the far north of Italy, and we have some very unique sausage that our family prepared and continues to do. It would not be classified as Italian sausage as USDA would call it, because USDA requires either anise or fennel to be in there, and anise or fennel is not to be had in the far north of Italy. But the family sausage, the Scalvini family sausage, would be something that's half beef, half pork, and actually have cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, and allspice in it. A lot of people say it tastes like Christmas, but to me, it just tastes like my childhood. And so those would be my favorites. Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
Meat is very emotional, right? Meat is very emotional, and there should be some type of connection that way. So,
that's a great point, and I think that is one of the reasons that meat continues to persevere through all of the ups and downs of the anti-meat, the investigations into meat alternatives. People do try things and then often revert back to traditional meat products for all the reasons that you said. I mean, I made meatloaf the other night, and I was so happy because I grew up with it, and it was freezing cold, and I wanted comfort food, and I just, it just brought back a lot of memories because I made all the side dishes that my mom would always make to go with it, and then ate too much and was miserable. But there's a lot of memories and culture that go with meat that I think, tying everything together are the reasons that we all four enjoy the roles that we have, and why we found meat science and love working in the meat industry.
I agree. Yeah, meat is a very noble food. I think it unifies his families and just helps with a good meal and having people together. And I think that's one of the, we go back years and years ago, I think that's what a lot of people were festing, right? I mean, we hunt and just come together and eat meat. And I think that's in our instincts. Maybe a lot of people out there may not like that idea, but that's a true statement right there.
Well, we look forward to eating meat together in person this summer at RMC. If we don't get to see you in person before then, I bet Francisco will get to see each other before then, since we're in the same city at least. But it will be nice to attend a family event together at RMC and to enjoy a lot of great meat products and everything from the heartland in that example.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing this. I think it puts a lot of things into perspective, like for me, because it's normally we're the ones giving those questions, but I think it's a good thing. I think we have to start doing this more often with just people talking about what we do on our daily jobs and some of the research that Dr. Bass is working on, and some of the projects that I'm working on in the States and also internationally, and how we help meat processors in general.
Perfect.
Well, you guys did pretty well, even though you totally bailed on, our attempt at a hard question. We'll give you a little more time to, think about that for the next one.
We're running for
but,
office, so no.
It was fun to turn the table on you, and we appreciate the opportunity very much, and appreciate the work that you do for MeatsPad and the combination of it and AMSA as well.
Grateful to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you a lot.